Well, good morning, friends, and welcome to our weekly Sunday sermon preview here at the Lebanon Church of the Brethren. I apologize for not uploading the last 2 weeks. We've just had a number of things in ministry that have gotten in the way, and they take higher priority some weeks. But I do want to get back into this. So, this coming Sunday, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 7. We're now in the very end of Matthew chapter 7, and we are looking at the parable of the wise and foolish builders in verses 24 through 28. And in this parable, as you'll find out on Sunday morning, Jesus is talking to people. He says there's two kinds of builders. The first builder builds their house upon the solid foundation, upon the rock. And when the rains come down and the sea rises, the house stands firm. But the second builder built their house upon the sand. And when the storms came down and the waters rose, the house was washed away. You know, it reminds me of a philosophical problem that we used to discuss. It was an example when I was in college, and we were talking about this old story about it's a regressive argument, but it relates to this, and I'll explain why in a moment. The question was, two men are walking along back when the Earth was still perceived as being flat. And the men got to talking, and they said, well, if the Earth is flat and the sun and the moon, they rise and they fall, what does the Earth sit on? And the one man said, "Well, you know, I've heard that the Earth sits on the back of a giant turtle." And the second man says, "On the back of a giant turtle." Well, okay, that's fine, but then what is the turtle standing on? And the man says, "Well, the turtle's standing on another turtle. Has to be two turtles standing on top of each other." And the man looks at him quizzically and he says, "Okay, but then what?" And the man says, well, it's turtles all the way down. You've probably heard this story before. Turtles all the way down. And in other words, I can't explain it, so I'm just going to say it's turtles and it's turtles all the way down. But this comes back to the question about where is your foundation? Because here's the thing. It's fine for us to have opinions and beliefs that are outside of the faith, right? You know, if you look around my office or you think about things that have influenced me, I was thinking about this with Brian Zahn from a post that he made this last week where he said about the top 10 people who was in there in his theological studies, and one of those people was Bob Dylan. Because Bob Dylan's writing as a musician was very instrumental. And I was thinking, well, who have been some exemplary people who have influenced my thought, maybe not necessarily just theological people, but who are some people who have influenced my thoughts? And I thought, well, what about Stan Lee from Marvel Comics? And now Jim Lee from Marvel Comics. He's a different person unrelated to the first. What about, perhaps Dostoevsky? That was actually a person who was in Brian Zahn's list. What about, the band Kansas, and some of the lyrics of those songs? They got me through some rough patches when I was a teenager. I was thinking about this, and it's fine for us to have these things in our life, but they cannot be the foundation. It's okay for them to be building blocks, but here's the deal, friends. If we try to take our Jesus and we put it on top of these other things, whether it be, any of these other good things, or whether it be, politics or philosophies or theology or church tradition, if we put our Jesus on top, what happens is when the rains come down and the wind rises and the waters rise, the house will crumble. Doesn't matter how much Jesus you put on top. Jesus has to be the foundation. So that's what we're going to be talking about on Sunday morning. I look forward to seeing you, and we'll be having our congregational meeting coming up. So be in the lookout for that, and see you on Sunday morning. Take care, friends. Bye.